What's a time you felt something was off and were right about it? My husband then boyfriend were watching our nieces and nephew plus a few of their friends, ages 5 to 10, overnight. His stepbrother at the time brought over some friends, stepbrother, and us, were 19 to 20, friends were 24 to 27. One guy walked through the kitchen and I immediately felt uncomfortable. They made the excuse stepbrother needed to get something. I rounded up all 12 kids into one bedroom I knew had a working lock and no window, to tell scary stories, which I knew would convince all of them to listen. My husband followed the group of guys through his dad's house until the one I didn't like threatened him. Turns out stepbrother knew we'd be alone with a dozen kids and decided to rob the place, and creepy friend planned to get to know my 10-year-old and 7-year-old nieces. I heard a fight, told the kids to lock the door behind me after whispering the password. I think it was lemon drop. Don't open it until I say the password. I stood outside that door until the cops showed up. Husband ended up with a broken nose and 2 dislocated fingers. I ended up getting dragged from the door and earned a dislocated shoulder fighting back. Creepy friend had several warrants for inappropriate acts with children. Father-in-law divorced very quickly when stepbrother's mom defended it. That's been 8-ish years ago, and the kids called us their bodyguards for a long time. 3 years ago this August I began noticing my grandpa napping for longer than usual, massaging his neck, and not wanting to go on his bike rides. And the bike ride was a daily ritual for over 30 years. I asked him how he was feeling and everything could have been chalked up to getting older, but I insisted that he get to the doctor. He was diagnosed with leukemia and died within 3 days. I'll always miss him, but I know that without his diagnosis, a lot of our extended family wouldn't have traveled to visit him before he died. I just wish I felt the need to ask about his health sooner. My grandpa was literally a genius. He used to build computers from complete scratch, soldering and all of that. Back in the late 80s, early 90s when they were still new, he loved boating with my dad and stuff. Then one day he felt extremely tired and sore all the time for no reason, so he went to the doctor, and he died of leukemia 4 days later. My dad got the call about it 3 hours before he got married. Long story short, my friend and I were trying to reach another friend to hang out and chill. Friend 2 didn't answer his phone. Went to knock at his house. His mom told us he wasn't home. Friend 2 wasn't feeling so well mentally in those times. On the way back, Friend 1 and me looked at each other, and we only needed to cross gazes to know we were thinking the same thing. We took care not to mention it directly for some reason. We took out our bikes in the gray, foggy evening and rode under light rain, and tried to think of and go check every meaningful spot Friend 2 could have thought about when deciding to do the thing. Knowing him at that time, it only made sense it was going to be some kind of meaningful place. Another gut feeling we couldn't quite explain. After a whole evening of not finding him, it was way past dark and we kind of forced ourselves to believe that everything was most likely alright. We were panicking for nothing and we'd see him the next day. Maybe the gloomy atmosphere of that night gave us ideas? We didn't know. We went home. Later, I don't really remember how much later, the 3 of us had an honest conversation about our suspicions at the time. Friend 2 confirmed to us that, on that very night, he was standing at the only very obvious meaningful spot that we were stupid to forget to check, rope in hand, staring at the tree he had chosen. He also managed to convince himself he was okay, and went back home that night too. No thanks to us. I work at a jail. Once had a feeling that a particular detainee was behaving unusually. I tried to talk to my coworkers about it, but they told me I was imaging things. By the end of the night we're donning riot gear and wrestling him. My gut was right, and now I always trust myself even when others don't. Go with the gut feeling. Don't ignore it. It's our human instinct and intuition kicking in and sensing the negative energy. When I was a teen I was told to help my grandma out of our car, and when I opened the door I looked in her eyes, felt something was wrong and yelled for my mom. When my mom rushed over, my grandma looked and acted just fine. My mom saw how distraught I looked and trusted me, I guess because she took my grandma straight to the emergency. Turns out my grandma had a mini stroke and was vulnerable to having another one. My house was robbed. I had gotten off work, pretty late as usual, and was driving home. Just as I turned the corner I got the biggest sinking sensation in my stomach and all I could think was, the house was robbed. And this is the first time this type of feeling was so specific and ominous. I'm putting the keys in the door feeling full dread, And opening the door, everything is everywhere, broken, turned over, missing. And I just stood in the doorway looking around at how surreal that feeling was. That night I couldn't figure out why I felt that as I was pulling up to my house. Maybe I had left a light on and my brain subconsciously recognized that the light wasn't on anymore. Or maybe I had overheard saw something in the neighborhood when I was sleeping the night before taking a walk leaving for work. It just really freaked me out, having that all come true, with such an intense feeling of inexplicable dread leading up to it. A neighbor tried inviting me and a couple neighborhood kids in his house during mid-2012 and I said no to the video games and candy. But my friends didn't, and I knew something was up, but my dad said I can't possibly ruin some middle-aged man's life without proof, and last year he was caught by police after Google started an investigation. He was caught and imprisoned for child pornography and touching the neighborhood kids. What a fact? Your dad didn't think that suspect? It's really sad how often kids try to come forward about abuse and aren't believed. I'd imagine part of it is that parents don't want to believe that something like that could happen to their kid, maybe because it would reflect on their parenting somehow. I don't know. Our school announced that kids were being abducted by a white van and to be careful. Literally that day, as my brother and I were walking home, the white van tried to abduct us. My brother was standing there frozen, but I yelled, "Run!" And we took off to some woman's house that we didn't know and asked her to call 911. She had apparently gotten a flyer from the school and didn't believe us. She thought it was a prank. Then we got called into the office the next day for pranking the woman, and even our parents didn't believe us. I told everyone it was a fat, Hispanic couple, which nobody believed because, of course, all child abductors are single white men and the thought of a couple doing it together was patently ridiculous. They abducted, raped, and killed another girl, and then finally the fat, Hispanic couple was caught. Totally right that nobody believes you. That time my back pain turned out to be cancer. We still joke in my family about checking WebMD for back pain, and it actually being cancer. OMG, same that happened to me. They told me I had angry muscles, and had injured myself doing yoga. It was a tumor Hodgkin's stage 4, then a stem cell transplant. I'm 8 years cancer-free now. I know I was young and they were following protocol, but I am still angry at the arrogant fuck that dismissed me so quickly. Once, when I was about 18, I was drinking with my older friends, 24 to 27-year-old. We were hanging one of their friends' place, and these dudes were kinda seedy. Like lots of underage kids, and whole lot of weed on the table. I think there was meth also. I got this dirty feeling and I bailed there with some lame excuse. Bam! An hour later there was a hostage type of dealio. The dude who owned the house had flipped on something trivial and pulled out his shotgun. Shit, did anyone get hurt? Nah, I don't think so. Dude turned himself in after an about hour. Still shitty though. I went to middle school with the dude who always gave me the creeps. I was told, both by other students and by adults, that I was being mean, and I should be friends with him even though he made me uncomfortable. It was a small private school and there was big push for everybody to play happy family regardless of circumstances. He had this fake smile grimace he'd do that just made my skin crawl, and I couldn't stand even trying to make eye contact with him. Well, most of a decade later it comes out that he's a repeat offending rapist, including raping and beating his girlfriend and posting photos of it when she tried to break up with him. When the news broke, I emailed a bunch of the people we used to go to school with about it, and their response was pretty much uniformly, "She's clearly lying to try to ruin his life. He'd never do something like that." Seriously? You can't fathom that the dude who was already making inappropriate sexual comments to female classmates at age 12, which the teachers never shut down and just considered funny, quirky, by the way, and would joke about harming animals, could possibly be a sexual predator? A guy came over to a friend's house one night, and there was just something skeevy about him. I ditched the party and forgot about him. A few years later we heard he had molested his cousin's kid, but nobody could prove it, so he never went to jail over it. Best part of the story is a few years ago, he lost both arms in a farming accident. Karma is a bitch. I was at the gas station with my sister, and she was about to get out of the car to pump gas. We were pretty low, but I had a horrid feeling about the place and my spine felt cold. I grabbed her wrist and said to go to the gas station down the road instead. She noticed my expression, promptly started the car, and we went to the gas station about 3 minutes down the road. In that 3 minutes, a shootout happened at the gas station we had just left. When I was around 10 or so, I had some friends over. When the time came to take them home, I had a really bad feeling. Something internally was screaming at me, "Don't go with them, it's a very bad day to go out." I went anyway, and we ended up getting in a car accident. I was the only one in the car who got hurt. How badly? Anything serious? A broken nose and some bruises. Not too bad, but I'm convinced that that car accident is the reason I'm not able to smell. Do you have a similar story? Leave a comment and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this one.